Now, East 38th in Chicago has become a moment in time for voices to be heard.
103 years has been a long time for this Norwegian spruce.
My passenger goes, "She doesn't have any pants on."
But that was not his initial plan. You see, he was all set to be 300 miles away from here. And even with lightning, thunder, and rain coming down on this Monroe County town, and even if it's a psychic ace, a dark angel, or even a griggle, Adeline wanted to make sure everything was done right for this edition.
All this from someone named,
believe it or not, Jesse Horne.
Carly Kimmerer spent Saturday keeping people refreshed. The 2014 UW Eau Claire grad has been working to open her new nonprofit coffee shop, now across the street from history.
It's kind of shocking, but it's not if you're paying attention. I mean, there's been a lot of unjust situations, and then there's protesting and anger, and then it kind of dies back down, and I think this was just sort of what woke a lot of people up to the reality.
The reality struck May 25th when George Floyd died while lying on the road in police custody. 4 former Minneapolis police officers are now charged in his death. Since that moment, this intersection has brought many on a search for answers during a turbulent time.
East 38th Street and Chicago Avenue in South Minneapolis has sparked much violence across the country for the past 2 weeks. But on this day, it might be the one spot in the nation that's seeing the most love and compassion.
The compassion was brought here by people like Pastor Edwin Williams of Sanctuary Covenant Church.
This will be the watershed moment. Our officials have to actually make some steps to make sure we don't keep coming back to moments like this.
The moment of May 25th has gripped the nation and has garnered worldwide attention. It has also reminded people in the Chippewa Valley the story is closer than they might think.
Bombing at Birmingham, I Have a Dream, and these are all historic, huge events that people remember, but this could be one of them. I mean, people might remember someday what happened at 38th in Chicago. They might remember the name of George Floyd, and that finally something changed.
The images at East 38th in Chicago are left in words and in song.
What do you want? Justice! And when do you want it? Now!
But at a time when social distancing had been preached to us, this was a moment when an embrace can help heal open wounds.
I did need that, I really did. It meant the world to me, and I promised him I will be a voice. I'm only a small voice, but there's more voices, and together we can do this.
Now, East 38th in Chicago has become a moment in time for voices to be heard. The goal now is to listen and decide which path a nation will take. In South Minneapolis, Jesse Horne, WEAU 13 News.
We shouldn't have to be doing these types of services for our men and women in blue.
They are the final call to arms for officers killed in the line of duty. The date of an officer's death is referred to as end of watch.
That's how detail-oriented that we get.
When that happens, it starts the clock for Jeremy Peary of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
You never leave a fallen brother or sister behind, period. So just because they're now deceased, it doesn't mean that they're no less important to us.
During a recent 6-month stretch, 3 officers were killed upholding the law. In each case, Peary was appointed officer-in-chief to orchestrate the last goodbye for the fallen.
We want to be as prepared and as professional as what we can to provide those services to that officer and their family.
This attention to detail falls on Peary and a select team of fellow officers to account for every detail, from where people are placed to the timing of the 21-gun salute, to even where the service is held. When Rusk County Sheriff's Deputy Dan Glaze was murdered last October, his service was held in the gym of the old Cameron School.
But no matter how large or small a venue is, Peary's team must plan and execute a grand display of pageantry in only a matter of days.
It's similar to planning a wedding for several thousand people in 4 days.
Rusk County Chief Deputy Phil Grassman is now part of Peary's team. His first service was for his former colleague.
I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. I can't believe this is actually happening. but it is happening, so I'm going to do the best that I possibly can.
He and Perry worked nearly nonstop to craft his ceremony.
And I stayed at his place, and we would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and start working on this deal, and then go to bed at 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night to ensure that we had everything lined up.
Amidst all of the choreography planned, the number one goal is still to show respect for the family of the fallen. Eau Claire County Sheriff's Deputy Corey Shalinski served as family liaison for his friend Dan Glaze and said much of the wishes for the service were made after Dan's death.
Dan was my brother. I know this is what he would have wanted. And to bring in a not so familiar face to say this is how we do it in law enforcement and this is how we recommend it, that would have been very tough for them.
Despite the strategizing, some things don't happen according to plan. And now that Perry has led the planning for 3 of these services, he knows now how to remain cool.
You can't get stressed out about that stuff. You just got to understand that those things are going to come up, and as long as you're solid in your planning, you got contingencies in place, we're good to go. If it happens, okay, let's deal with it and move on.
It is only once the tributes end and the deceased is taken to their final resting place can Perry and his team reflect on the officer's final and proper salute.
Our very best that we can do is the very least that we can actually do for that officer and the family. So nothing less than our best is acceptable.
Well, it's always been here. As long as I've lived, I'm going to be 73, and it's been here every year. It's a special tree.
This tree in the center of Whitehall has stood for several decades, the site of many memories.
All of us
under the tree.
No, what?
My first kiss was under the tree.
Oh, okay, well, whatever, I didn't know that.
But it was a sad memory which hung over this tree before the sun rose this morning.
103 years has been a long time for this Norwegian spruce. In fact, 15 U.S. presidents have come around during the time that this tree has stood here in Whitehall since being brought over in 1928. But on Friday, that timeline came to an end.
The first sign that today would be the spruce's final sunrise, parking spots on Main Street were blocked off at 5 a.m. The reason for taking the massive tree down: Wisconsin statutes call for an unobstructed view of rail crossings 330 feet from the center of an intersection.
You know, we're governed by a certain set of standards, and it was identified as a hazard by those national standards and by state statute. Now we have to deal with it.
Not everyone in Whitehall was ready to deal with this. They included Cheryl Branger, who along with her brother crossed Main Street and gave a final farewell.
It's Whitehall. You know, we all love the tree, and we all are suffering.
Then, at 7 o'clock, crews arrived to start dismantling the hallowed tree. Once the main branches came down, people approached to take home a pine cone and hope to bring a new spruce to life, including Cheryl, who stood next to what remained of a dear friend.
It's very, very hard to see something like this happen. Somebody said, oh, history's being made today. And I said, no. I said, history is being destroyed.
In Whitehall, Jesse Horne, WEAU 13 News. You've gone out, had a little too much to drink, and then hail a lift.
Well, it turns out my passenger goes, she doesn't have any pants on.
That's when a driver such as Dave Alderson of Menominee picks you up.
For that to hit me at about 2:30 in the morning, it's like, okay, well, I guess I've seen everything now.
He's tried to stand out from other drivers, from offering candy to riders, to even decking his car out on St. Patrick's Day. But his lift can be boiled down to 4 letters.
My license plate says Lyft, L-Y-F-T. And most people are kind of like just caught off guard by seeing my profile, my van, and Lyft, and they're looking for the license plate and they can't see it, and when I pull up, they're like, oh, I get it.
It's a memorable license plate, and one which serves as an important safety factor.
Simple tips would be to go as a group. You know, don't ride alone, ride in the back seat. and just kind of general descriptors about the vehicle and know who's giving you the ride.
Officer Coit says one tip to keep in mind when you call for that ride share is to look at the rating on the driver.
A driver with a better rating is probably more reliable than somebody who may be new, so you can be selective of who you choose.
Alderson credits having close to 1,200 rides with Lyft and usually works most Friday and Saturday nights near Water Street and downtown Eau Claire.
I could safely say students are about between 30 and 35% of our business. And I thank you. Thank you, students.
And says all he's trying to do is give a lift to those who need it.
The people are awesome. I've only had one bad ride in 1,200. I think I'm doing pretty good.
But I'm familiar with the water, and the water is my friend usually. It was the ice that did the damage.
Donald Powis can sit and laugh now, 2 days after the 69-year-old social worker was preparing to once again do what he loves.
Don came here to Merrick State Park on Friday to reel in some sunfish, but that was not his initial plan. You see, he was all set to be 300 miles away from here, in Door County, trying to catch some brown trout.
The fellas called me and said that they caught one fish in 2 days and forget it.
He arrived at Merrick State Park at roughly 2 p.m. Friday, then walked 40 yards out from the shoreline and onto the ice.
I was picking my spot, and what happened was I was standing there, and all at once I went down.
Down into deep water.
I looked up and I saw the hole, the sunshine. So I swam up to the hole and then I pulled myself up on the ice, just this with my arms.
There, Donald hung onto the ice, his legs and body immersed in the icy waters for 30 minutes before anyone heard him. Eventually, multiple crews came to rescue him.
I was thinking that I had some living to do, and I was thinking that don't panic, okay? Then maybe this will turn out all right.
Sunday, Don was able to share a few laughs with a friend.
We made her, okay? We made her, all right?
As well as return to Merrick State Park, thinking about what happened and recalling some advice a doctor said to him while recovering this weekend at a Winona hospital.
If you got anybody that you want to talk to or thank or do anything with, he says you better, when you get out of here, he says you better go talk to him or whatever.
Just minutes after saying that,
so here comes somebody, huh?
Nicholas Lorenz from the Fountain City Fire Department was able to meet the man whose life he helped save.
I'm surprised you made it as far as you did. As a firefighter, we don't really get to see what happens when the ambulance leaves, or we don't hear the outcome, or, you know, maybe you might get a vague story that's totally incorrect. You just never know.
Nicholas now knows he had a part in something very special.
I don't know. The words, he's walking. I mean, so.
Walking to live another day and even share one more laugh.
There's different ways to get a fish sandwich, you know.
Jesse Horne, WEAU 13 News. People in southern Wisconsin were already spending Tuesday cleaning up from major thunderstorms overnight. This included in the town of Leon in Monroe County.
I've got a few things collected in my yard that I didn't have before. I've got a new mailbox and stuff like that.
But then, another powerful line of storms ripped through Monroe County in the afternoon, dumping more rain on the area, including in the village of Wilton.
Worst storms that I've ever seen, and I have lived in this area close to 17 years total.
Becky Hahn was at home when a tree in her yard nearly split in two, narrowly missing her BMW.
We've got flooding in the basement that we've never had, flooding in the area that we've never had. Never seen anything like it.
And the water just kept rising.
And even with lightning, thunder, and rain coming down on this Monroe County town, it is a flood 40 years ago, which is on the minds of many this Tuesday.
We had a flood fairly close to this, but this one I think is doing quite a bit more damage than that one did.
Wilton Fire Chief John Doherty said his department had to perform rescues downstream and even in town, but even where he works was hit.
We just had water flowing through our fire station. Which has never happened before.
As Hahn and her family looked at what Mother Nature gave them on Tuesday, they also received something else.
Sure.
Please be safe.
Yeah. Packages they were expecting from Amazon. A slice of life, even when that life is rocked by Mother Nature once again.
It's should be respected. and it is a force to be reckoned with.
I really like, like the sound of it.
That sound.
I really like the click-clack of the cups.
And his hands have taken him far.
Iowa, Florida, Colorado, Missouri.
All this from someone named,
believe it or not, Jesse Horne.
Not that other Jesse Horne. The sports stacking Jesse Horne has been clicking and clacking this passion since he was 9.
When people see me do this for the first time, they'll make like many facial expressions. They'll do facial expressions like this, or like this.
And has become one of the nation's best in his age class.
But when I was 3 years old, a light switch turned off for me and my family.
That's when it was discovered he was autistic.
My family started to notice that the milestones that were normally met in a child's life were not happening for me. And I was literally leaving them and living in my own little world.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, about 1 in 59 children in America has been identified with autism spectrum disorder. And that rate has doubled over the last 2 decades.
They understand everything that you're doing and saying oftentimes. They just aren't sure how to express themselves back to you.
Long and the staff at HSHS Sacred Heart Hospital work with autism patients to make them feel at ease in releasing that expression.
Occupational therapy looks more at their emotional regulation, their sensory processing, just making them feel calm. And if a child is feeling calm, then they're more likely to be able to use their words and communicate effectively.
The sports stacking Jesse Horne hopes his skill can make him an ambassador for kids with autism.
I don't usually call those people with disabilities. I call those people with abilities because they have the ability to succeed.
And his success has stacked up rather well. With Jesse Horne in Eau Claire, Jesse Horne, WEAU 13 News.
Do you want to go or me?
Zach Chafee locks in for another battle at Eau Claire Games and Arcade.
And then does 1 damage to this, I'm going to regenerate it. You've only lost 2. And then I'm going to use his +2 to draw 2.
This is the language of Magic, one of the first ever collectible trading card games.
Well, for me, there's a lot of strategy in it. And so I have to think about what I'm doing. There's a strong bond with everybody that plays these type of games that you can't really find much where else.
And even if it's a Psychic Ace, a Dark Angel, or even a Griggle, the cards in these games can have more value than even when they're just played during a friendly match.
I think a lot of people are surprised by the actual value of some of these cards because they're like, well, it's just a piece of cardboard. Like, how expensive can it be?
The monetary value of most cards can range from a few to several $100s, and even more. Prices can even be monitored online, almost in real time, to see if it's up or down. If that sounds familiar.
It's almost like an investment. I call it a stock market, but it's an investment. It allows the player to play games and switch decks and actually hold value of what they have.
Lowkrantz was the owner of an Eau Claire store which sold specific high-dollar Magic the Gathering cards, until a 2015 burglary changed that.
I was knocked down but not knocked out. It did take out my business. I did lose it at the end of the year. Wasn't able to really come back from it. But a few years later, I have not forgotten the game, nor the community, which is an excellent community.
So I'm at 9 life.
For those that play any of these games,
it can get pretty crazy.
The overall joy can be worth more than the value of the card.
Not as competitive as I used to be, but I don't like losing either.
And on this night, Chafee came out on top. There's nothing quite like Saints Peter and Paul in Independence. But after several decades, church officials knew their house of worship needed some renovations.
One of our initial members says, Bill, you're getting into a 10-year project, because one of our goals is to do what we can afford, not to have the church go into debt.
One part of that project, making the church more handicap accessible. Enter Adeline Kulig-Pacini.
I don't do steps. I live in a retirement place, and when I came here and had to go down 13 steps, and I was following a man on crutches, I said, that will never do.
Today, the 88-year-old Independence native, now living outside of Washington, D.C., was back at her old church, visiting relatives, preserving memories, and seeing her $500,000 gift come to life in the form of the new North Elevator addition.
Adeline wanted to make sure everything was done right for this addition, including having the same brickwork and stained glass that was used when the original church was built back in 1895.
Turned out beautifully. I think the picture of Pope John Paul is so lifelike.
Father Woodrow Pace said this addition is a step forward for his parish.
The church now is serving a broader community, and we're just pleased that it all went so well.
But Adeline can now see how her step is part of a longer journey for Saints Peter and Paul Church.
And I did see pictures of it on Facebook. Somebody emailed them to me, but it's not like the real thing. This is absolutely beautiful.